So, deal or no deal? Let's find out from the Noel Edmonds of British politics, otherwise known as the Brexit Secretary, David Davis there. I mean, you get my analogy, you get my point here, David.
No, I don't. What is the Noel Edmonds?
Will you walk away, or are you going to play hardball?
Oh, I see. All right, yeah, sorry about that. Yes. Forgive my lack of cultural awareness. It's... Look, the Prime Minister last night was not going to do the negotiation on air. Of course she's not. But the point she makes is very, very clear. If you are going into any deal, you've got to be willing to walk away. If you're going to buy a house and you say, oh, I'm going to buy this house is so wonderful, I'm going to buy it, irrespective, you'll pay a very high price for that house. And in this area, just yesterday, we've had the European Union, the European Commission issue a whole new set of demands, including that after we've left the European Union, European citizens here should be able to export benefits to countries abroad, should be able to bring in people from third countries, and it should all be administered under the European Court, so we still don't get out from under the European Court. So there are lots and lots of demands being made, very tough stance being taken by the European Commission. We've got to be able to deal with that and deal with it toughly, and that's what she'll do.
You see, but in the programme, in Noel's programme, you've got to guess what's in the box. Is it a deal? Right, OK. So right. The thing is, you may win, you may not win. And it depends how much of a risk you want to take. But a lot of people will be watching this morning and they would say, what's the worst that can happen if you walk away and you say, no deal? What's the worst that can happen?
Well, I'm not going to give you a great shopping list. I might give the European Union some more ideas. But what they've already demanded, we've seen the 100 billion demand for money, and that looks like going up, not down. We've seen the demands for the European Court to continue to have a say over Britain. We've continued the demands for them to have a say over our tax policy, demands to have a say over many other policies. You know, at the end of the day, you say to yourself, well, how are we actually out of this organisation? So there are a whole series of demands being laid down, some by the Commission, some by member states. Now, the point you've got to remember at the end of this, any good negotiation tries to get an outcome that's good for both sides. What we know after spending 10 months studying this is there is an outcome that's good for both sides. It's a free trade agreement, it's a customs agreement, it's mutual help on terrorism and security. That does exist. What we have to do is get past all of the upfront demands, the normal opening of a negotiation, frankly, the sort of tough line at the beginning, to get past that to get to what is beneficial to both sides. And you can only do that if you're willing to say no, and you're willing to step away if need be. You know, that's not your plan, that's not what we're aiming for. But you know, if you are in a position where what you're being offered is not good enough, you have to say it's not good enough. And that, if the ability to do that means you're much more likely to get a very good deal at the end. And we believe that we're going to get that very good deal. We know how we want to do it. We've got a plan for it. The public parts of that plan are laid out 100 pages of 2 white papers, speeches, letters to the Commission and so on. So that's the point. And I think the public listening will know. They know from their own experience. If you go in for a negotiation, you have to be willing to be tough.
Yeah, and on that point, Jeremy Paxman suggesting that EU negotiators would be looking at Theresa May as a blowhard who collapses at the first sight of gunfire. He cited the U-turn on social care cap, the U-turn on national insurance, the U-turn on holding an election itself. So, you know, they're saying that she'll be saying one thing, but it won't actually stick to it.
Yeah, it always amuses me with the top news item is what the interviewer said, not the interviewee. But let me talk about dealing with European...
what she did as well. He was making the point about all the U-turns, wasn't he?
Charlotte, let me respond. I've seen Theresa dealing with the European Commission, indeed the whole country's seen it, when after the famous or infamous Downing Street dinner, there was that amazing briefing. It had very little relation to what actually happened. That amazing briefing that came out of Brussels a few days later. And what did she do? It's a very good demonstration of how you deal with these things. For the first 48 hours, she said, I don't recognise this account. Now, that's a very, very polite way of saying it's not true. But over the course of that 48 hours, you also got demands for 100 billion. You got suggestions that she couldn't do the negotiation herself. All sorts of other suggestions about our negotiating strategy, designed to undermine the British position and bolster the Brussels position. So after 48 hours, she stopped and said, "That's enough. no more trying to interfere in our election, no more trying to put out propaganda, and they backed off. And Jean-Claude Juncker admitted effectively, publicly, that they'd made a mistake and that they realised that they'd messed it up. That's how you deal with it. You don't get into tit-for-tat arguments. You don't get into the sort of backwards and forwards escalation of insults that sometimes you see in this. What you do is you're firm and clear about it, just as she's firm and clear about Brexit. And she does that because Brexit's the underpinning of the entire strategy coming up for whichever government the people elect in a week or so's time. You've got to have a good Brexit, to have a good economy, to pay for good public services.